Okay, everybody, it's Boothby and Tony Zerbin, and we are talking personal growth.
Yep.
Let's talk about personal growth.
Yeah, you bet. So you came up with this one. Do you have what's the kernel? What's the idea that started you on this one?
I was just thinking about what's something that Tony and I have in common. And I think that's something that I see in you. I think you're somebody who I admire as an individual who's always working on themselves, and that's something that I aspire for in myself.
Hmm.
I will say that interesting people are interested in interesting things. And so there's just some people I just find are a little bit more fascinating, and a
Hmm.
correlation would be that they're they're doing some things outside their box. They're sort of challenging their personal growth in different ways,
Hmm.
taking risks academically or with different thoughts, different activities. And I think that's interesting. I'm like, that does something for our mental health.
Hmm. Totally. Yeah. I mean, if I were to talk about why I think I lean into personal growth the way that I do, I mean, I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. I don't think I can always plumb the depths of it.
Sure.
Um, I mean, a quote that I came across that really smacked me over the face when I was quite young went something along, I think we might have even talked about in the past, but it went something along the lines of, it's the mark of an educated mind to be able to consider an idea without having to accept it.
Yeah.
And then I think even some of my education really kind of rounded it out and said, you know what, if you're going to argue against something, let it stand on its best feet, right? And that means you really have to be able to be inside it to understand it, to let it be on its best feet.
Yeah.
And that's unsettling, it's dangerous, but it's also being willing to admit that you don't always have the whole picture,
Yeah.
but you can get more of the picture, and that you
Yeah.
might be better off having more of the picture.
Yeah. And I like that. And I mean, I think part of personal growth is exploring things that are really uncomfortable. And
Mm,
um, the faith that is required to doubt greatly.
yeah.
So for me, those are important parts of personal growth. Another thing is I've always toyed with interest in Jordan Peterson.
Hmm.
I don't know a lot about him. You sent me something of Jordan Peterson's a while ago, and
Hmm.
I started following him on Instagram. And again, I'm just sort of noticing a very
Hmm.
interesting, thought-provoking person.
Hmm.
And I'm not, you know, a zealot. I'm not, you know,
Yeah.
a Jordian or something.
I'd
But
have to have
I,
a conversation with you if you were.
yeah, I like listening to him because he
Mhm.
puts this, he puts this something out there, and I'm like, that's really good to
Mhm.
just think about. I don't necessarily have to agree. I'm just really, really thinking. And some of his stuff I really agree with. Like, I think he's a great guy to follow
Mhm.
because he is an inspiration for personal growth of just like think people. Think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. Um, and he does it two ways that I really appreciate. He can really give you a clear picture that you can kind of hold and wrap yourself around and walk away with to really understand. And then other times it's like, hey, that was really like crass and a little bit like offensive and like, but you also have to walk away with crass offensive stuff. Yeah, you have
Yeah.
we're wired in a way to walk away with that too. And there's times where it's like, okay, so that really didn't settle with me well. Is there something I can take from it? Do I have to reject it wholesale?
Yeah.
And is that something about me that it's not letting
Yeah.
it settle well? Or is it something about reality?
Yeah. And I think it takes courage to, I mean, we're not going to talk about Jordan Peterson, but
Fair.
but the courage to have some shock value. And then, I mean,
Yeah.
so, and like, I think there's value in personal growth. I want to talk about some of the, the points of how to develop personal growth that I think are important. One of which is accountability.
Mm.
And so, like,
Hmm.
in my own personal growth and my own endeavors, I have some great friends like Tony, and I have a
Hmm.
theology buddy, and I have my husband, and I have some other friends that are just people.
And mentors too, right?
Mentors, yeah, mentors are hugely important. But all these people that I can just sort of like bounce ideas off
Yeah.
and have safe shock value with. I don't have the confidence to be Jordan Peterson and be like,
Mm.
hey,
Yeah, no,
I
me
dare
neither.
you to disagree. But I do feel like I can be provocative with
uh,
Tony to
uh-huh.
an appropriate level, or with my theology buddy, my mentors, my husband. I'm a little bit more Jordan Peterson-ish. Give him the cures. He gives me the cures. But that safety to grow, to have personal growth alongside of someone else.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's that mentorship piece
Mm-hmm.
that I find so important. That sounding board piece. There's always little niggling thought in the back of my head. Whenever I say something like, what if I don't have the whole picture? What if I'm wrong here? I hope somebody has the courage to point out where I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of why I like putting myself out there is I hope somebody has the courage to show me I'm wrong. And I'm putting myself out there to make sure that they have that opportunity even.
Oh yeah.
That's why I say things in really this collaborative spirit, saying, point out to me if I'm wrong, please.
Yeah.
I really want you to, right?
Yeah. And that safety to be wrong. I mean, there's some
Yeah,
relationships where it doesn't feel safe to be wrong.
no, for
But
sure.
if we know it's like I don't I'm a student, I'm learning, I'm developing, even though like I think with my career as a psychologist and having expertise as an emotionally focused supervisor, I still give myself a lot of permission to know I don't know everything.
Hmm.
And that's a byproduct of personal growth,
Yeah,
is that when we've grown enough to be like, hey, it's okay to know that I don't know anything.
yeah, yeah,
So that accountability, being alongside of people helps us to keep filing off some of those edges. If we're growing all by ourselves, what's I don't know, what's the point?
yeah, yeah. No, totally.
And the accountability is part of measure as well. So a valuable piece of personal growth is that we're seeing a measure.
Exactly. Yeah. Otherwise, how do you even call it growth? Right? Is
Yeah.
it are you growing a tree or are you growing a cancer? Like what's actually happening?
Yeah, yes. And because I mean too, like you're sort of saying, risking knowing some uncomfortable topics.
Hmm.
As we learn things, we might discover we disagree with something. But if we're alone in it, like that's risky.
Yeah, because you might be bumping into things that are really challenging your foundations.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, a really good mentor has this almost parental or fatherly or I don't know the right role to even name for it, but this approach that comes alongside and says, "Hey, let's pace you.
Yeah.
Hey, before you go there, and it's not that you're not going to go there, but before you go there, start here,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because growth is a little hazardous, and we
Yeah.
need each other."
And
I
yeah.
one of my first therapist. I remember talking with him at one point in a session, and I looked at him at one point after he said something, and I said, "Man, I'm confused." And I just like I was really, really having a hard time with it. And then the most peculiar thing happened. He looked at me, leaned in, twinkle in his eyes, and he said, "Good." And I said, "What the heck, man? Why are you saying good? I don't you want me understanding things?" And he's like, "No, I'm actually really happy that you're confused. That's a good place to be because it means
Mm-hmm.
you're not just saying something you already know. You're actually open when you're confused
Yeah.
to potentially finding out something new about reality."
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's made me really actually cherish the moments of confusion and pause in them and say, okay, this is uncomfortable, but what if I land with something even more solid?
Yeah. I mean, it, I think that's so. I love that we're talking about mentors because a good mentor. I'm such an advocate for mentors. I always have supervisors or
Yeah,
people who know more than me who I'm asking questions. I'm just
same. Yeah.
saying, take care of me a little bit. I'm a hot mess, whatever it is, right?
Thank you, me too.
And it's 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 extremely important. A great mentor.
Mhm,
I think when I get to be a mentor, because I do at times,
mhm.
my belief is that I want people to grow past me.
Yeah.
And if you've had an experience with a mentor that doesn't believe that, it hampers personal growth. And some people
Oh
really
man.
don't want you to
No,
grow.
no, yeah, no, for sure, because it can make them so insecure.
Yeah,
They lose visibility.
yeah,
They lose power. They might lose something in their sense of identity.
yeah,
Growth. If you grow,
yeah,
it changes your relationships. And man, we're here to support you, like
yeah,
therapeutically, so that you end up in good relationships. Because not
yeah,
all relationships are good, but that's what makes growth dangerous, right? I can't tell you the number of trainings I've been through where people are growing a lot, and then all of a sudden, like, I mean, it breaks my heart, but it's like, wow, people are going through divorces because suddenly they realize they're in a relationship where their partner's not willing to grow, and
yeah,
they are growing.
yeah,
And rather than growing together, they've grown apart.
yeah,
I mean, that kills me, but I mean, there's also the sense it's like, okay, hopefully you're with people that are growing too. Hopefully your mentors are growing. And
yeah.
if you grow past them, hopefully they're comfortable being peers because that's still amazing.
Yeah, and you might go past your people at times, it's sort of like in the, but if you outgrow your environment, that can happen.
Hmm.
And so it's just this like being choosy of our accountability, of our mentors, of our measures,
Hmm.
that it's when we're really taking our personal growth as valuable. It's like, how do I
Hmm.
construct a good environment for me to do this in and evaluate as that environment changes? Because if we're doing a good job of growing as an individual, our environment hopefully will change.
Yep,
Um,
exactly.
I also think like personal growth should be enjoyable. Like if it's not a chore.
No, there might be a bit of suffering in it. Here, there's growing pains,
Yeah.
right? There can be growing pains, but man, the things you can do differently when you grow,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Talk to a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, and they're like, man, I can't wait to be an adult because look at all the things I can do.
Yeah.
I can buy ice cream cakes whenever I want. I can drive a car. Like, it's like, okay, growth is about maturity. Maturity
Yeah.
means you're able responsibly and powerfully to do many
Yeah.
more amazing things.
See, it's like there's pain. Like for me, one of my personal growth, this is my next personal growth
Oh
goal.
man.
It looks painful, but
Yeah.
I'm really excited. Like I'm gonna enjoy reading.
Yeah.
This is just a different translation of the Hebrew and the Greek scriptures. And I'm like,
Mm.
I really don't want to read this, but I will
Right.
enjoy whatever's gonna happen for me because I have read this. So the
Yeah.
suffering and the enjoyment, it's a strange thing, like that there's an enjoyment, even though obviously, I mean, seriously,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's full of suffering. There's a lot of words in there.
Well, and I mean, on suffering, even on suffering, as if I can give you a treatise of it. But that's also, I think, really been a key theme in my desire to grow,
Mm-hmm.
is that I have suffered and I have been in close connection with people who've suffered and in communities of suffering. And the thing that that drives me to grow is that I look at this suffering and I say, this didn't have to happen this way.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because people were thinking too small or they were missing some key part of being human that the suffering happened,
Yeah,
right?
I
So
agree.
I would rather do the necessary suffering of growth than cause unnecessary suffering for myself and the people around me.
Yeah, and personal growth takes mental flexibility. There are things that I really believed were right,
Mhm.
and I have discovered were actually wrong. And that's normal. And I mean, it, who here has that story? As we go on and with age, our beliefs
Yeah.
change and we believe something, and then we realize that there's a better truth.
Yeah.
And
A bigger,
so,
fuller, deeper, richer.
yeah, and I think that's part of personal growth, like you're noticing, is this mental flexibility, and that as I have more space to ask different questions, as I commit to reading an exhaustive book to try and see things in a more accurate way, or with more accurate interpretation, is my actual goal with the book I'm mentioning.
Yep,
But
yep, yep.
it's like it's it's scary.
Yeah,
Our minds change.
yeah, yeah. They do. They really do. But I mean, it's like, who doesn't have the experience of running into another person in the body of an adult that never grew in
Yeah,
every other way? And it's like, whoa, the amount of pain that comes from that when you have 40-year-old 4-year-olds,
yeah,
right? It's like, no, I don't want to be that. And it
no,
doesn't have to be reading that's all growth, but it's like, how do you hold relationships? How do you hold yourself?
yeah,
Who's speaking into you? I mean, so some of the best modern reading from ancient times wasn't reading in ancient times, right? You think about Plato, you think about Socrates, great names to throw at you if you want to sound really smart. But when you look at how they grew and how they taught, they did two things. They went for a walk and they had a conversation just like this.
yeah.
It wasn't reading even because most people couldn't.
No, and even that, like, what naturally evolves when we talk. So when we're talking about personal growth, and then all of a sudden mental flexibility makes sense. I'm like, oh, I wasn't even thinking about that. That's because Tony and I are being accountable. We're just discussing and further distilling this topic. So that,
Mhm.
and I like what you're saying. It's not just reading. It's
No, yeah,
what music am I listening to? What
yes,
shows am I watching?
yeah.
What TikTok talks am I watching? Who am I following on social media?
Who am I having over for dinner?
Yeah, who am I having over for dinner? What, where am I going in my leisure time?
Yeah,
How much silence do I incorporate into my life?
yeah,
And the valuing, like, what am I valuing?
yeah, yeah,
And so there's the personal growth thing for people where it's like, I don't even know where to begin. It's, well, what am I watching on television?
yeah,
And what if I was, you know, watching a few more travel shows instead of reality TV? Or what if I decided to follow Jordan Peterson on Instagram just
right.
because he's supposed to make me uncomfortable?
So here's a Peterson quote on growth that I came across recently. I was actually listening to a podcast on dragons, and they just referenced that. Because as one guy's podcasts on dragons, right? But the reference to something he said was in terms of, what if the thing you need the most is where you least want to look, and the dragon is guarding the gates of your biggest treasure? All right. And I want to hold that here while saying something else about it. Growth isn't just for growth's sake. It doesn't, I believe fulfilling, satisfying growth isn't for growth's sake, but it is to become more human, right? So then the question I think that we also need to ask is, what do I believe human is? You know, how can I become more human,
Yeah.
right? And that's a really big question. But then you can say, am I growing in that direction?
Mm,
Or am I actually growing in the opposite direction?
yeah.
Am I
Because
becoming a little bit more dragon-like myself?
and personal growth is really about discovering our humanity, and then You
Mhm.
know, and it's interesting. It's like, hello, my name is Tara. I have a friend named Tony, and he listens to podcasts about dragons. I just want to say that
You
to
can
him.
say that. Why
But
not? Go for it. I'm
it's
shameless about
it's just like I think that there's this evoking our own curiosity,
it. Hmm.
so much of personal growth, so much was fun about being human is being curious. And I shared a conversation with my mentor in July, and we were talking about the Lord of the Rings and the
Yeah.
character they identified with and who I thought they were. And then
Yeah.
I ordered the poems of Tom Bombadil because I'm like, I just really
Yeah.
feel like I need to understand. But this is part of personal growth, is it's not this drudgery of like
Yeah.
growth for a purpose. It is, as we get better at being with our own growth, it's really embodying and enjoying being human. So that
Hmm.
for me, it's important. I love Tom Bombadil. I've always
Hmm.
loved him. He's my favorite.
Hmm.
So I bought
Hmm.
the books of poems
Hmm.
that Tolkien wrote about him. And it's been so inspiring for
Yeah.
for me. I would say the inspiration of reading the poems is something's changed with my lens, with how I'm seen and communicated.
Hmm.
I don't fully get it. Maybe one day I'll be able to have a conversation with Tony and make better sense of it. But so the curiosity, and then with personal growth, it's also making time.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you're making time.
To
Tony's like,
value it.
yeah, you're listening inside. You're like, I think I need to know about dragons. I'm listening to me. My humanity needs to know something. And then I'm making time.
Well, I mean, even on dragons, right? So I'm trained to be somewhat academic. I like reading. It's part of who I am. I know there's many other ways of being human, but on dragons, why why have we inherited so many stories about dragons? Why have humans given us so many stories about dragons? Because I think at the end of the day is, what do these stories tell us about being human or
Yeah,
not being human? What does a dragon tell us about being human or not being
yeah.
human, right? Do I want to become like the dwarves that get dragon sickness and just focus on gold and hoarding
Oh,
and
yeah.
backstabbing, or do I want to actually look at the dragon and say, not today. I'll
Yeah.
take I'll take what I've got. I'm gonna set a table in the Shire, and I'm gonna have the best ale, the best food, the best pipeweed, and just have all my friends around and kick up our hairy feet on the table and play a good song,
Yeah.
right? There's these two different pictures of what we could become,
Hmm.
and we're
And
somewhere in the middle.
it fits too. It's like, it's lovely how, I mean, just talking about personal growth, all of my sort of thoughts about what contributes to personal growth is actually coming alive. And what you're saying here too, what I found is I choose a focus. So,
Mhm.
how I've learned and embodied attachment science,
Mm.
is that I obsessed and I really dove in. I got training, I was reading, I was being mentored. And then my focus of attachment, I just started looking for it in my life, like the ways I was growing. So whether I'm
Yeah,
thinking about dragons or Tolkien's, or I'm watching
yeah, yeah, yeah,
a marriage story, or I'm watching
yeah.
Inside Out or Encanto, or these different films.
Stories, yeah.
I'm listening to music. I'm reading like theology. I'm reading fiction. I'm looking for the attachment, because when we choose our personal growth focus, Tony's thinking about humanity these days.
Hmm.
So when he's in his curiosity, his personal growth focus
Hmm.
is being inspired.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I were to even put it in this way, I see being more human in two particular ways.
Mm-hmm.
Can I hold more of what's good, more of what's true, and
Yeah.
more of what's beautiful? The three transcendentals.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of us focus on holding what's true and forget about what's good or even what's beautiful,
Yeah.
right? And then we fall over because you need the three-legged stool, so to say. The other piece, and this is what I like saying to my clients, is our goal, my background agenda in therapy my focus, my orientation is how can I help you be more you,
Mm-hmm.
and how can I help you be more you in connection with people that are being more
Mm-hmm.
them? Can I be all of me? Can you be all of you? Can I be more human and meet you being more human?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because there's something about us that needs to be in connection to actually even feel human.
You're right.
Isolation's kind of anti-human.
Yeah. Well, it's against our biological design.
Absolutely.
Like
All our stress markers go out the roof when we're
yeah,
isolated.
our evolutionary design. We're created for connection.
Hmm.
And when you're talking about truth and goodness and beauty, it's like it is a necessary combo because if personal growth, pursuit of truth without pursuit of goodness and beauty, if we lose the awesome and we don't realize that ultimately we want love, then truth is,
Useless.
well, it's not, it's a word.
Oh, I would argue it's even dangerous.
It's danger. It without goodness and beauty. And
Yeah.
that's where, and I mean, like, hello, just pick any political topic right now. Only focus on conceptuality and forget about what is the goodness of humanity, what is the beauty of humanity. Um,
Hmm.
and and those things direct us to our pure of heartness. The
Hmm.
more we can hold in our humanity, and this is personal growth, that in my
Hmm.
humanity I have space for truth, I have space for goodness, and I have space for beauty and awe.
Yeah.
And that moves me more into that sense of who I am, which is really at my core, I have a pure heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hard to believe.
Yeah.
That's really hard
Yeah.
for us to believe. That one is was hard for me to want to try and believe. And my humanity often will try to convince me otherwise.
Well, and it's the I have and I want to have, and they're both true at the same
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And people far smarter than I have said things like, in order for something to really, the true is true, has to be good and beautiful.
Yes.
The most beautiful beauty is also true and good.
Mm-hmm.
The good is good. Great English. The good is good is also inherently beautiful
Yeah,
and absolutely true.
yeah, yeah.
Right?
And
They come together as this singularity.
yeah, yeah. And so, and there's this is the piece too. So I mean, it's distilling down the parts of personal growth, which part of it's like, what am I passionate about right now? What's meaningful or
Mhm.
purposeful? If it's humanity or love, I'm really interested in love and peace this year. I was very interested in the beginning of the year, but what is peace and how to
Yep.
experience and give it? And I've connected love into that a lot. So then
Yep.
I'm like, that's my lens that I'm
Yep.
looking through. And so that focus and making time and cultivating time through what's accessible, what's measurable and manageable. If I don't feel up to reading my giant book, but maybe I can listen to 10 minutes of a podcast, or maybe
Yeah.
I can listen to some good music or have a conversation with Tony.
Yeah.
And the accountability and the mentorship, like we're not in a vacuum. We're in relationship with people.
Yeah.
All of these ingredients. It's enjoying. If I'm not enjoying it, if I'm married to this giant book,
Hmm.
personal growth that does not make.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, for me, it's always my curiosity is what am I missing? What am I skipping? If I'm in connection with somebody, how did I wish I could have shown up?
Yeah.
Or where are they struggling to show up? And is there a way that I can show up that helps them show
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when you say that, it just reminds me too, like with personal growth, I always sort of have these goals that
up?
I like I want to dive right in and do a character sort of and like a character analysis of Henry Nouwen.
Oh, okay.
I haven't
Yeah.
really dived super deep in, but I know it's like one day I'm just gonna like really dive deep. I love the man.
Yeah.
He's so present with people. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
when I watched a Fred Rogers documentary, I watched it like I was obsessed. I was like, I gotta crack the code. Fred Rogers. But there's these things of like it's enjoying and it's shifting and moving. It's a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
So personal growth is spiritual experience and it's a spiritual expression. It's
Yeah.
soulful. It's a soulful thing.
It's lived.
It's lived and it's measured. Like you can measure it academically, but it's also just an individual measure.
Yeah. Well, I like that you landed there. I'm floating a little bit and joining you at the same time. Um, so it's that individual measure that we do together. And I had a friend that I went on a walk with, and we talk about everything we have no control over and get a little depressed and excited at the same time. But then we started talking a bit about theology. And, it's one of my other passions, right? I really like diving deep and getting really technical and really holding big thoughts. And he looked at me and he's like, do I need to do that too in order to be like a good Christian or something? And then I paused and I'm like, I'd love it if you did. And that's what I thought in my head. And then I'm like, no, you don't, right? That's not what gets you in, so to say. I said, you could have some old grandma that is really faithful in washing dishes, and she says her little prayers as she does it. She's looking out a window, can't even read the scriptures. And sure, maybe she's got some ideas that are a little bit funky, but she's faithful.
Yeah.
And she's present. She shows up. And for all my learning, I wish I could do what she does.
Yeah.
And if she's got some ideas that are a little bit funky, maybe I can sit down over dinner and enjoy some of her good sweet rolls if they're dairy free. And we could have a good conversation and be present together. And she could give me what she's got. I could give her what I've got. And then our growth is a human growth, a family growth.
And it's not always agreeing. And there's all this is sort of the beauty of, there's an ambiguity.
Mm-hmm.
There's an intuitiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we, like, as you experience personal growth, and I mean, some of the points that we've noticed, you can see pieces like this is how we can start moving more fully into it. And then once you get your own footing and your own method of being in your personal growth,
yeah,
organic, it's all interpretive dance.
Yes. In one of my big personal journeys that I'm going through, there's certain things where I'm like, I need to have an answer. I need to know. This is like dog in my soul. I gotta know. And there's a certain point where I'm not getting the answer. I know there is one. I feel it down in my toes, but throwing myself directly at it's not working. So then I step back, take a deep breath, make a cup of tea, read something else. And then wouldn't you know it, I'm in a totally different garden and I get my answer. It's like I hit a wall and I have to find a door somewhere down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I realized too, and we'll start to wind things down here, but it's like, I'm kind of in this phase of just thinking it's about the journey and the destination, that my humanity is such this journey that I have a focus. I believe in a destination, that there's a spirituality that is over, under, through, surrounding this journey. But for people who are sort of like, that's something I want to have more personal growth. One foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Start somewhere. Where you are, that's where you start.
Know that you want it. Allow yourself to be curious.
Yes.
Oh, there's a third. Take time to step back, have a cup of tea, and get your feet under you again.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just
right?
do just whatever, you throw some shit at the wall and you see what sticks.
Yes. It, honestly, because it's like, hmm, I think there's that faith, that trust that if there is a destination, that taking one step at a time, you can
Yeah.
get there. But that you're not there today and you're not there tomorrow. Just take that next step.
Yeah. Mhm. Awesome. So, I mean, hopefully this is curious or inspiring, and hopefully people just say, hey, I would like it if people watch this and they said, I think I want to try for more personal growth and just feeling more inspired and
Mhm.
liking myself as an interesting human.
Yeah.
It's nice to find yourself interesting.
Well, heck, if you've watched this far, if you've participated in this conversation, and you're like, wow, Tony said something that I really disagree with. I said it before. I'm owning it again. Challenge me on it. That's good for both our growth.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, well, thank you so much, Tony. And as always, it's lovely to just be alongside of you and think
Hmm.
with you.
Yeah, yeah, oh, it's mutual. This is always fun.
Okay, bye-bye.